Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've got a crazy story out of Kentucky. Gary sent this to me, and this one is just beyond words. Williamsburg attorney's arrest derails attempted murder trial. So there's a trial happening, and one of the attorneys was arrested for DUI. And the details of the arrest actually make it even scarier. But the arrest last week of a local defense attorney in the middle of a trial led to a flurry of legal activity, as he first claimed a setup, then he retracted the assertion. And now there's some big issues both with him and his career, but also with that trial. So the attorney is 67 years old, facing charges of reckless driving and operating under the influence. He was pulled over by Williamsburg police last Wednesday morning. This is Williamsburg, Kentucky. Traffic stop occurred shortly before the man was due in circuit court for the second day of a jury trial in which he was representing the defendant on a 19-count indictment that includes an attempted murder charge. So he's an attorney going to court, and he gets pulled over for reckless and DUI. So the officers were responding, according to the citation, after 911 dispatch received a call reporting that a black Audi was all over the road and driving on the sidewalk in the vicinity of the University of the Cumberlands. The vehicle was reported to be traveling at an extremely low speed, according to the citation, backing traffic up in both directions. So officers each reported the car making sweeping turns as well. One officer added her observance that the vehicle cut off a Chevy Tahoe before turning onto 4th Street from Maine. The driver was then stopped in front of his office. The citation indicated that the violation occurred at 8:40 in the morning. 8:40 in the morning on a weekday. This is Wednesday. As an officer approached, it stated in the report that she observed slow, slurred speech as the attorney reportedly asked if he's going to jail. So apparently he knows how this works. He told the officer he was on a lot of medication and had not slept, according to the citation. So the officer brought in some assistance with another officer who would ultimately serve as the arresting officer. And while waiting for backup, the attorney fell asleep and passed out in the driver's seat. So suddenly he managed to fall asleep. And that's the thing. You're having a hard time sleeping. You're up all night because you can't sleep. Finally, you're in your car, you're comfy, you fall asleep, and wouldn't you know it, the cops interrupt your sleep. That's just how it seems to go, doesn't it? Once the other officer arrived, he started to administer standardized field sobriety tests, which weren't successfully completed, according to citation. The attorney was then placed under arrest at 8:56 a.m. and transported to an emergency department for a blood test. The citation further stated that a PBT, preliminary breath test, subsequently administered by an officer indicated he had a blood alcohol level of 0.160, again on a weekday morning. The attorney was then lodged at the Whitley County Detention Center around 12:44 in the afternoon and released at 2:02, according to Jail Tracker. In the meantime, the trial in which he was serving for the defense could not continue, which he initially implied may have been the point of the incident. And this is his statement. They claimed I took a turn too wide and I slowed, but the reason I slowed was I knew the police, was following me, and I knew I was being set up. I'm really angry about it. But he was further then stating he was unlawfully arrested because they knew we were winning and knew the jury we had was not going to give in. They've been politicking for 15 years for life imprisonment. I have filed a motion to dismiss the indictment because of the false arrest of the defense attorney. So he thinks the fact they arrested him can get his client off from a trial that's still in progress. This is the first case I ever had that the Commonwealth attorney would never make a pleaded offer, and they knew a jury wasn't going to give them time, so they basically caused a mistrial, so it would take months more before I could get another trial date, and I'm very angry. So that's the question. So you start a jury trial. The jury is impaneled. That matters. And you get through one day of it, and the next day the attorney doesn't show up for whatever reason. Let's say he just disappears. But we know where he is here. But the attorney doesn't show up. The trial cannot proceed, at least not that day. The judge has to make a decision. Do we simply adjourn it a day or two until the attorney can get back in here? I mentioned there's a problem because the jury's been impaneled. Once a jury's been impaneled, you can't just simply go, okay, we'll just start over, unless it is a mistrial. And so a judge can declare this a mistrial. Now, if the prosecutor didn't show up, that might be a different matter. But here it's a defense attorney not showing up. And you can imagine the problem if a defense attorney could simply skip court one day and get his client off because, well, he can't proceed, the attorney's not here. Well, if this is caused by the defense side, obviously, mistrial will start it over again somewhere down the road where this guy can get an attorney who doesn't have things like this happen to him on weekday mornings on the way to court. So a message to the police department wasn't returned by press time, but Ronnie Bowling, the Commonwealth's attorney, denied the attorney's claims. He said, I will say I had nothing to do with this. This is an outrageously false lie. I'm prepared to prove and defend that in any setting that this is just further evidence, if you look at the pleadings of the case, that the attorney is trying to drive this case into a circus to distract the ultimate fact finders from the horrible actions of his client. That is all this is. The prosecutor then offered some advice to defense counsel. I think the best thing the attorney should do is what everyone charged with the crime should do. That is to be quiet and let the court process play out. I'm not ethically allowed to comment on pending cases, and neither is the attorney. I think it would be best the lawyers follow the ethical rules for our profession and let this play out in a courtroom. Meanwhile, by Thursday, the attorney filed a motion to strike the motions for dismissal and reduction of bond he had filed the day before as incorrect and without factual validation, asking they be formally withdrawn. There's an interesting point. So he filed the motion saying, hey, look, I was set up. He then filed a follow-up saying, can I withdraw that motion? Meanwhile, he complained about a reporter. The one newspaper reporter that had contacted defense counsel for a statement has since been advised that defense counsel's statement is completely retracted as completely inaccurate. So that was written into one of the motions. Meanwhile, the prosecutor's objection and response to this attorney's motions to dismiss outlined the arguments against a conspiracy involving anybody and said those allegations are patently false. In the motion to strike, which has now been withdrawn, he explained he was headed to court on what he knew would be another lengthy day. He had worked late, endured a sleepless night due to the stress of the trial, and he filed a subsequent proposed order Friday to accompany the latest motion, and the jury trial status hearing has been scheduled for June 19th. So, meanwhile, the attorney himself is scheduled to be arraigned in the district court on July 24th. And so, there you go. But there is a lot going on here. And I hate to read between the lines, but I can tell you that there are a lot of professions, not just lawyers, but there are a lot of professions that involve a lot of stress. Unfortunately, stressful professions often lead to substance abuse problems. I'm not sure this could be a one-off. This could be the first time the guy's ever had a drink for all I know. But if he blew that on a weekday morning, most people would say that right there, my friends, is a red flag of sorts. And so you have to understand that besides declaring the mistrial, the court's going to be very, very unhappy about some other things. Jurors got dragged in for nothing because those jurors will be excused, and they sat through one day of trial as well as the jury selection process for nothing. Prosecutor was there. The assistant prosecutor may have been there. The court reporter was there. The judge was there. The bailiffs were there. Everyone was there. That courtroom is a resource paid for by tax dollars. And so I know a lot of people don't look at it that way, but you have to look at it that when people start wasting the time in there. And so there is a big trial. It sounds like a very serious trial happening in this courthouse. Serious trial happening. And one morning, one of the attorneys doesn't show up. Somebody calls the court and goes, are you looking for this guy? he's in custody, and no, we can't release him because of why he was arrested, and his system still contains that alcohol, and we won't let him out until that dissipates. And it sounds like they did that in the afternoon. And so at that point, the judge has got to go, okay, is there any way we can salvage this trial, or do we just declare a mistrial and start all over again? And it sounds like they did that. Mistrial and start all over again. So somewhere down the road, meanwhile, just one more casualty here is the defendant. Defendant, waiting to go to trial, could get an answer at the end of the trial what's going to happen to him. But the trial that started the other day, well, that got short-circuited. Now he's going to go back to jail probably and sit. So he could be out on bond, but I don't know. There's no reference to that here. And it sounded like a stack of charges, 19-count indictment, including attempted murder. So there's a good chance the guy's, cooling his heels in the jail while awaiting trial. So this all happened in Kentucky. Kristen Gibson wrote it. Williamsburg attorney's arrest derails attempted murder trial. At one point, he said it was a frame-up, but he's withdrawn those allegations. Gary, thanks for sending it. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind.